Okay. I think we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Columbus City Schools Finance and Accountability Committee meeting today. Today is August 11th, 2021. We're excited to have everyone here.
For crying out loud. All right. Welcome, everyone. We are transitioning officially here from Zoom to being in person in Zoom. But thank you so very much for joining us today. Welcome to today's Finance and Accountability Committee meeting. Today is August 11th, 2021. Today we will have a pretty comprehensive agenda before us. We'll, of course, convene the meeting by going over approving the minutes, our monthly financial report, and then walk into budget requests and so adjourn. Mr. Treasurer, can we call the roll?
Board Member Brown.
Here.
Let's try that unmuted here. I'll do that again. Board Member Brown. Board Member. Okay, Chair Cole.
Present.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Ms. Johnson. Mr. Jordan. Mr. Miller.
Here.
And Member Ragland.
Here.
And we'll keep an eye out for Board Member Brown to rejoin our meeting here in a moment.
Board Member Brown.
We are waiting a moment for Board Member Brown to join us, who is by note in person as well.
Yeah, please proceed.
We're fine. We still have a quorum. I mean, he's here, so he's going to get assistance to get online, but we're good. We've got a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Moving on, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. For our monthly report, Mr. Treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cole. This is the monthly financial report for June, the final month of last fiscal year 21. This report will be reviewed and presented to the Board of Education next Tuesday at their regular meeting. Through the month of June and the end of the fiscal year, revenues continued to run above plan, about 32.5 million, or about 3.4%. You can see expenditures on a little over $1 billion of expenditures for the year. It came in at a mere $439,000 below plan. And I'll explain a little bit about how we hit that target so precisely. The ending cash balances, you can see, ended up about 33 million above plan at 283 million for the end of the year. The only highlight I have for you on revenues is state funding, which ended up about 27.8 million above plan. And the three major pieces of that are three items, two that we didn't foresee, and the other one we had factored out in our plan because of COVID. Those two that we didn't foresee were the $19.5 million Bureau of Workers' Comp dividend, and the fact that the state decided to do a partial restoration of the previous reduction of both the last fiscal year and the fiscal 21. That brought in 5.2 million that wasn't in the plan. And then we had factored out casino revenue entirely. It's a very small number. We usually have around 2 million to 2.25 million in the plan. We took that out because casinos were closed. So we just made that conservative estimate. And that was just for FY21. In the forecast though, in the future years, we put it back in. So this is a kind of a one-time adjustment, but at that, it was still just 1.96 million. And that's the bulk of the $32.5 million revenue above plan variance. Graphically, you can see here, the only line item that stands out is the state aid line item, which I just described for you. I'm going to note that member Jeff Jordan just entered.
I'm back online.
Okay, what time is it? 4:15?
4:10.
4:10. Thank you. And when I break out all other revenues, you'll see here that they're very much on plan. Property tax, there were some timing issues during the year, but it came in, the property tax allocation. And everything is just very close to on plan. Again, state revenue being the big variable. You can see we were tracking monthly state aid revenue. You can see they pretty much followed an equal 1/12 per month behavior, except for December when that large Bureau of Workers' Comp refund came in. And in February, we had a catch-up payment when they restored or partially restored the cut. Here's our heat map. I just wanted to do a comparison. I was doing this earlier today, so usually I delete this slide, just show you the current month. But you can see here back in May, we were pretty favorable, but when we get to June, we're even more favorable. So over on the right-hand side, the two columns, you can see there that we're very much on plan or favorable in all the categories. On the expenditure side, operating expenditures, I'm going to break this into two pieces, operating and non-operating, and then you'll see how things balance themselves out. On the operating side, we actually ended the year 79 million under plan. 30 million of that was in personnel. 6.5 million was in charter and the scholarship deductions, and then 42 in all other non-personnel. As you might be aware, the state budget has now begun to, for this current fiscal year, directly fund charter and STEM schools and the scholarships. So this line will disappear from our monthly financial reports. It will no longer be a deduction that we will have to report as an expense. And then in terms of all other non-personnel, the 42 million under plan, this is exactly why I switched in the forecast to do percentages of budget rather than the budget as the plan, to make the forecast more of a cash flow plan than just a budgeted plan. So we can anticipate to be under budget, which is what I built into the forecast. So that $42 million doesn't indicate that we didn't do something. It just indicates that we typically underspend our budgets in many of the categories. You can see our non-operating though, we were 78.7 million over plan. And that is solely due to the fact that the Board of Education made the decision to provide funding for the Student Transportation Fleet Replacement Fund to the tune of $80 million. So we transferred that in June over to that separate fund, and that will provide funding for the purchase of school buses and related student transportation vehicles for somewhere between 8 to 10 years, depending upon how the costs go and what they choose to purchase. The offset to that was advances out ended up being about $1.3 million less than what was in the original plan. So when you bring those together, 79 million below plan on one, 78.7 above plan on the other, got you down to that 439,000 under plan variance on $1.4 billion. So we have broken the $1 billion mark this year, I think for the first time in the general fund operations. Graphically here, you see personnel running behind plan and charter slightly under plan. All other expenditures, when you break them out, you can see there on the left-hand side, purchase services leading the way there. And in purchase services, you have things like fuel and utilities that we budget. I hate to say generously, but we don't want to have any surprises there. So we do provide ample budget there. And that's why we typically run under plan. And then on the far right-hand side, you can see the large blue bar there that represents the transfer out, the 80 million transfer out. In May, we were very favorable in all these categories on expenditures. And in June, you can see for the month to date, the left-hand two columns, they went red because of that $80 million transfer out. So that was an unfavorable or over plan variance. But all in all, at the end of the day, the bottom line is we were right on plan, obviously, for expenditures against the plan. So for June, we ended with a very typical picture with revenues running above plan and expenditures either on or slightly below plan. And I think the good news is that really that we were able to fund that student transportation fleet replacement plan and still be on target with building a cash balance and meeting those expenditures. So I'm pleased to report that, and that concludes my report. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Trencher, for the presentation. Are there any questions from the committee? And welcome aboard, Jordan. Good to see you, sir. All right, if there aren't any questions, we can move forward with the budget request.
And I believe Misty Nichols will be speaking to this request at this time. So Misty, if you would unmute and go ahead and let us know what's going on, and we'll see how much feedback we get when you start to speak and what kind of technological changes we need to make. Go ahead.
Okay. Do I sound clear? All right. Good afternoon, Chair Cole and members of the committee. This budget request will fulfill the board resolution of joinder of prospective litigation, which was adopted at the June 1st board meeting. The request is to pay the membership dues for fiscal year 22 to the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Advocacy of School Funding. These dues are for the voucher litigation project, and the total amount for the dues is $2 per enrolled student. So the enrollment for the 2020-2021 school year was 45,510 students. So the membership dues for fiscal year 22 are $91,020, which is the total of the request. Please note that in the document attached on board docs, there is a typo on page 5. The amount should be listed at $91,020.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Are there any questions for Ms. Nichols about this expenditure, this budget request?
Just from a process standpoint, if FAC is comfortable with this and would recommend approval, it will go forward to the Board of Education as part of the amended appropriations on the August 17th meeting, if everyone's in agreement with that.
If in agreement, is there a motion for approval and passing forward to the Board of Education?
So moved.
Mr. Brown?
Second.
All right, seconded by Chair.
Chairman, I'd like to request a voice vote.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'd like to request a voice vote. Call the roll, please.
So we can call the roll with a voice vote.
Sure. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Board Member Ragland?
No.
Board Member Brown?
Yes.
And Chair Cole?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. All right. If there are no other questions, it's going to be the shortest meeting in history here for us.
I think you are correct. I think we had one that was like 23 minutes, but you're looking at about 18 right now. So
Sounds like a plan. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all so much for your attendance. We've got a great year ahead of us. We look forward to more meetings and really getting some things moved forward financially. Thank you guys for your attendance. See you next time.
Thank you.